Hello, this is week 5 for competitive marketing strategies. Thanks for hanging in there during this online class that I know is pretty rigorous with lots of activities due from week to week. We're going to talk about corporate social responsibility, and we're going to talk about ethics this week. This is chapter 8 from your textbook. So ethics and corporate social responsibility is something that's much more in the public eye now when it comes to organizations, large and small, and how they evaluate their participation in various factors that are environmental. It's also something that has really been born from organizations that do unethical things. So it's become sort of a necessity for most companies to at least have the strategy or the public face that they're doing something for the environment. And with our way that social media and communication is so popular, so prevalent, and so public, organizations really have to invest in this part of their response and the way that they operate and what they do. So the broad definition of is that it's an organization's need to maximize its positive impact. Ethics are an important part of how a company puts on its social face or its public face. So it's a way that organizations can try to build trust from the people that are their users. Unfortunately, a lot of times the way that we build trust now is just by saying things, by portraying and advertising and other related factors, ways that we want the public to think about us. But as an organization, we have to really think about the intersection of what it is that we're trying to say and who we really are. Also, it's something that the marketing team needs to take into effect because it can really assist them in terms of marketing and promoting their product. So ethics is really something that is born from morals, from standards, and the company itself needs to have established principles already that it define its acceptable approach to doing business, and that's going to filter into marketing. What's marketing going to be doing that has an ethical component to it? And there's different marketing communities, like associations. There's a marketing association and there's a public relations association, and both of them have foundational elements of doing things in an ethical fashion in terms of describing the product and how organizations orient themselves in their communications to customers. So it's determined by basically lots of different aspects too. The principles will be something that are established within the public forum, within an association. It's something that will be affected, and factors that deal with it are government standards, regulations. And if you think about what your product might be, if it's a medical diagnostics product, if it's a pharmaceutical product, there will be ethical components built in from the government in terms of how you create this product, study its effect on people over time, and then market it. So there's also things like private interest groups that will affect how an organization's product is perceived. And if we think about the use of fur and in women's clothing, there's a group that wants animals to be treated ethically, and a lot of times the designer industry has had very negative press from the people that are concerned about what the designers use in terms of their animal products. If you think also about Volkswagen, they recently had a scandal about how they were portraying their emission standards on the cars, and they were actually at that same time creating ads about themselves that showed them to be angels. So the issue there is really that, again, the public and the private face need to be, as much as possible, need to be one. So there's different aspects of corporate social responsibility. It starts really with how does the organization, first of all, has to make money. It has to be profitable. It has to be doing something that ensures overall sustainability of itself. Then there's the whole issue of how they fit within the laws and government or other regulations, state regulations. And then are they ethical themselves in the way that they deal with employees and with the way that they manufacture and launch their products. And finally, this is where a lot of corporate social responsibility strategies come in, and that is, how does the organization serve the public at large, the community, and maybe underserved communities? So ethics really have to be based on standards, values. Every organization is going to publicly put those out around their community, around the office where they work, or even online. The public themselves can really look at ethical violations, of course, in a very negative way. And even what's, I think, unfortunate now is that sometimes the stories that are told about companies or products are not necessarily maybe the whole story. So ethics is not always something that's totally clear. It's a convergence of many, many different complex issues. And my personal philosophy about it is that when you create policies and standards, those are important, but it's really when the rubber meets the road, when people get together, that all the different ethical factors need to be understood and need to be dealt with. That's why professional organizations for public relations and marketing are something that are also applying pressure to marketing teams to do things in an ethical way. So personal decisions might be one thing, but depending on your product, the industry that it's in, there may be variability in terms of the way that you behave. And one thing that marketing needs to be really careful about is that they're not trying to portray a public face that's in effect incorrect, because marketing has a lot of different ways that it can appeal to people on a subconscious level even. So the activities and decisions within the marketing plan would be to make sure that the team has identified within its analyses what are the problems, what are the choices, and what are the things that might affect how the product is marketed. And I remember when I worked in marketing, we had tests for cannabinoids, or THC, and we had a problem with one of our tests technically in that it would see aspirin and produce a positive result. So we wrestled in the organization about even putting this story out, but in effect, if people were going to lose their jobs, or if people were going to have other ramifications from this test, we needed to tell the truth. So we did that. There were negative consequences to our firm for a number of years because our competitors used that information against us, but we resolved the problem really quickly. We did tell the truth, and we told customers to switch to a different product. But the whole issue with ethics is that if you don't disclose something, if you have some sort of a product that's a counterfeit, of course that's a problem. There's other issues with respect to price fixing, price discrimination, or even unfair labor practices. So we as marketers need to be careful about exaggerating claims and always need to sort of pass things through the filter of ethics. Now, the other issue is that when it's part of your company organizational phrases or standards, then it needs to be something that starts at the top. And I remember in marketing, we always had, when I was in marketing, we always had pretty clear directions about how we wanted to promote, sell, and try and push our products. And the president usually was on board with everything we said. In weird ways, it was sometimes my marketing boss that was not on board with the way that we were doing things. And I think she was always balancing return on investment, revenue generation. And as a marketing person, I remember arguing with her about product concerns, sustainability just of getting the product out and continuing to be able to provide it. So those are things that are going to come up in any organization where you work. So the organization itself really needs to think about ways that it can reward people that behave ethically and walk the talk. And in another class that I taught, we had, there was a website and an article that we read about organizations that have jerks at work. And it was kind of interesting because the person that was describing this was saying companies need to have a policy against being a jerk at work. They need to hire people who are not jerks. They need to reward people who are not, and they need to have consequences for people who behave in a way that's not ethical or not helpful at work. So it's the same sort of thing here, that the best practices need to be established to create a good morale. And by the way, working in the marketing team can be a really, like, one big one big long high when you're working there, because there's lots of great activities that you do. You interact with your customers, you have a product that you launch, and you market for it routinely. And it can be really successful and high profile. So it's a fun area to work. So code of conduct, of course, these are, I think, pretty straightforward. I don't think we need to talk about this too much, but at the organizational level and within marketing, and at the top, all the way filtered down, there needs to be these types of factors that are indicating that the company cares about it in terms of being trustworthy, respectful, caring, and a good citizen. And corporate social responsibility is one of those things that helps the organization to show that they are a good citizen, especially to the population at large. So if you have an organization that is strong on its ethics and the way that it reports its social responsibility, internally people will have much more high motivation to work and to serve customers in a positive way. You have higher trust, of course, across the board with the stakeholders. And I have a link on this slide that describes the world's most reputable customers. One of the companies is Lego, so I think that's pretty interesting in terms of their corporate social responsibility, and also just the way that the organization approaches ethics and trustworthiness. Salesforce is another company that really has a high dedication to serving its community. Before they even were a profitable company, they had a philosophy from their leader, Mark Benioff. He called it 1-1-1, where he gives, I think it's 1% of its time, 1% of its profit, and 1% of its product to make a difference in the world globally. And so from a long, long time ago, before they even made very much money, he created this particular philosophy. And on their website, they have a way to connect employees to social causes that employees might want to get involved in. And I think that's a great example of someone who walks the talk. The other thing that Mark Benioff did was he was a big advocate, and he still is a big advocate for equitable salaries at work. So he did he did research on his own company in terms of his female executives and what they were paid, and he was shocked to find out that their pay was low compared to male executives. And so over time, he and his organization have worked to make the pay equitable, and I think it's really been a difficult process for him. I think if you search, there might be an interview online that you could see where he describes his dedication to not only external things that he does for the community, but also internally what he's trying to do for his employees, and females specifically. So your marketing plan really needs to have an ethical component. You want to really just understand when you're creating a marketing plan what the risks might be if you have something that's perhaps inappropriate or something that might be manipulative to users. And I would say that most companies don't go about their business on purpose to do things unethically, but it's a part of what it is that you want to be planning. And you should think about any ethical concerns that would come up with respect to the strategies that you generate. So this is the end of chapter 8. This is week 5. You're going to be working on a discussion thread this week. You're going to have a case and create some strategies for it. You'll take the quiz. It's the second quiz of the term or the class. And then there's also an extra credit assignment on augmented reality. So thanks for listening. I wish you well during this week of competitive marketing strategies.